Thank you for pressing play. Your presence here brings joy to my heart. Hello, fellow enthusiasts. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of Anolis cristatellus. Anolis cristatellus is a small species of anole, belonging to the Dactyloidae family of reptiles. The species is native to Puerto Rico and the US and British Virgin Islands, with introduced populations in locations around the Caribbean. The males of A. cristatellus are easily recognizable by the fin running down the top of the tail, which is known as a caudal crest. The females also have this crest, but it is smaller than that of the males. The species is often quite common in many areas on Puerto Rico, where it can be seen during the day passing the time on the lower parts of tree trunks, or on fences and the walls of buildings in urban areas, sometimes venturing down onto the ground in order to lay eggs, have a snack, or do other cursorial activities. Like many anoles, this species displays the characteristic behaviour of doing push-ups as well as inflating a pizza-like flap of coloured skin on its throat, known as a dewlap, in order to show others how dominant it is, and thus attract mates or intimidate rivals. The species is known locally as the lagartijocaman, and in English it is sometimes called the crested anole, the common Puerto Rican anole, and the Puerto Rican crested anole. There are two allopatric subspecies found in different geographical areas, with slightly different colored dewlaps and crests. In this section, we'll be peeling back the layers of taxonomy to reveal its true essence. This species was first scientifically described as Anolis cristatellus by Anne-Marie Constant Dumrell and Gabriel Bibron in 1837 using a number of specimens sent to Paris by Auguste Paul from Martinique. They also had an additional specimen supposedly from French Guiana, although these two authors doubted the veracity of this provenance, and a further female specimen found in the collection of the Musée National d'Histoire Naturelle, labelled by Nicolas Michael Oppel as Anolis porphyrus, apparently a nomen nudum. Georges Cuvier had first examined the specimens sent by Paul, and dubbed the lizard Le Petit Anolis acrite in the second tome of his massive work, Le Rodent Animal, a few years before, stating that the taxon Anders Spearman had called Lacerta bimaculata was a synonym of this species. Dumrell and Bibron were not in agreement with this observation, however, and described Spearman's lizard as a lychee. For the next century and a half the taxonomy remained stable and uncontroversial, until Craig Geyer and J. M. Savage attempted to split the very large genus Anolis in 1986 based on skeletal, immunology and choreological datasets used together in a type of cladistics method called successive weighted characters, thus moving most species into a new very large genus called Neurops, and moving Anolis cristatellus into the genus Ctenonetus. Following Geyer and Savage, Albert Schwartz and Robert W. Henderson also classified this species as Ctenonetus cristatellus in 1988. Because this splitting caused the new remaining genera to be paraphyletic, most herpetologists chose not to follow this taxonomic interpretation, and within a decade this new nomenclature was seen as a synonym. In 2012 the same authors, together with Kirsten Nicholson and Brian Crother, again tried moving the species to their new genus, this time using more molecular data in their cladistics analysis, but did so less than convincingly. They gave it another go in 2018. Our focus now turns to subspecies, an important aspect of our discussion. As of 2020 there are two subspecies recognized: Anolis cristatellus Puerto Rico, including some offshore islands, introduced elsewhere. Anolis cristatellus Wiley Grant, 1931, Culebra and Vieques Islands east of Puerto Rico and the US and British Virgin Islands. In 1975 the authors Schwartz and Richard Thomas reported A. cristatellus to be the subspecies present on many of the islands east of Puerto Rico. This was corrected by Heatwell in 1976, who classified these populations as A. cristatellus wileyii. Hybrids between the two subspecies were first found on the main island of Puerto Rico and Isleta Marina in the late Urs and reported by Heatwell et al. In 1981 this islet is now covered in giant apartment buildings, but by 1988 it appeared that many of the populations occurring on the islands in between the two taxa were intermediate between the two taxa. Schwartz and Henderson recorded such intermediate populations on the islands of Cayo Iquitos, Cayo Lolave, Cayo Palominitos offshore of Isla Palominos and Isla Pineros. A larger island in this area, Culebra, may also have somewhat intermediate specimens. With our curiosity piqued, let's embark on a dedicated exploration of type and its fascinating intricacies. The syntypes for the nominate form, n and m, are housed at the Mus National d'Histoire Naturelle. It was stated by Dummerell and Bibron in 1837 to have been sent from Martinique, but the species does not occur on this island. The reptile database, however, records a holotype, Mus also catalogued as Mus, being kept at the Museum of Comparative Zoology. The subspecies Wylie has a holotype, Ms, kept at the University of Michigan Museum of Natural History along with a number of paratypes, although according to Schwartz and Henderson in 1991 the holotype is Ms. As we progress, let's zoom in on common names and examine its role in shaping our overall narrative. In its native Puerto Rico the vernacular names Lagartijocumen or common anole are used. Another Spanish name is Lagartija crestida. Other common names which have been recorded are the crested anole, which is often used in the Virgin Islands, and the common Puerto Rican anole, the Puerto Rican crested anole, which is recommended by some people, or the somewhat incorrect chameleon. In this section, we'll be peeling back the layers of description to reveal its true essence. Compared to many other anoles, it is a stocky, muscular and aggressive, although it is a small compared to Central American anoles to moderately sized species compared to insular Caribbean anoles. Measurements in 2015 found the animals to have a snout vent length SVL which can reach to 75 mm in males and up to 73 mm in females, although most females are much smaller. It is sexually dimorphic, with the males being prettier than the females. The juvenile lizards are also colored differently than adults. The males of this species are easily recognizable by their permanently erect caudal crests, which is a high sail or fin-like structure running down the top of their tails, which is supported anatomically by bony extensions of the vertebrae. The crest is very short along the animal's back and gets higher again on the nape of the neck. The tail is compressed in cross-section. The color is variable. The head and body are bronze to greenish-gray, with faint and irregular brownish spots, and the belly is greenish-yellow and the throat is whitish. The iris is dark brown. The male dewlaps is colored mustard or greenish-yellow, with a burnt orange, reddish-orange to reddish-colored band along the margin. Females have a well-developed but smaller dewlap and a low caudal crest. The juveniles are transversely banded in brown, with some purplish-brown dots on the throat and the crotch when preserved, and often have a light mid-dorsal stripe, which some females retain into adulthood. It can change its color significantly from a very light gray to reddish-brown and dark black, and can shift color in reaction to its behavioral state. They are thus often referred to as chameleons in many places because of their ability to change color, but they are not related to true chameleons. Turning our focus to similar species, let's explore its key elements. Many other anoles also have a crest on their tails, but this is one of the few species in which it is always erect, and where the tail is compressed. The pattern of the scales are also diagnostic, as shown by Schwartz and Henderson in 1991. In this part of the video, we'll be delving deeper into native and analyzing its key components. The nominate subspecies is native to and found throughout Puerto Rico, including some smaller and associated offshore islands. It does not occur on Isla Mona, nor is it found at the highest elevations. In Puerto Rico it can be seen with regularity in the cities of San Juan, Meguez, Ponce and Arequipa, as well as in nature parks. It is found on the associated offshore islands of Cayo de Muertos, Cayo Algodones, Cayo Batata, Cayo Ratans. Near Jobos, Cayo Santiago, Isla Cardona, Isla de Cabras, Isla de Ramos, Isla Maguis, Long Island, Morilito and Punta Salinas Beach. Schwartz 1988 and Heatwell 1981 disagree regarding on how the population on Isleta Marina should be classified. Note there is some confusion with Marina Cay in the British Virgin Islands. In 1939, Hobart Muir-Smith described Anolis cozumela as a likely endemic from the island of Cozumel off the eastern coast of the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, from a single specimen collected by Charles Frederick Millsper in 1899, which had been sitting in a flask of preservative in the Field Museum of Natural History until examined by Smith. This taxon was later seen as a synonym of a cristatellus, which was then believed to be introduced to the island. However, as of 2017, Mexican herpetologists think all this is spurious, as the species does not occur in the Yucatan. It has also erroneously been ascribed as occurring in Brazil and Martinique. In the upcoming portion, we'll be dissecting introduced to gain a comprehensive understanding of its implications. It has been introduced to Costa Rica, Trinidad, eastern Hispaniola in the Dominican Republic since the Urs and southern Florida. It has most recently been introduced somehow to the Dutch part of the island of Sint Maarten, where it was first reported in 2009 as introduced in 2008 and is only found on the tiny little key islet in Simpson Bay Lagoon. Many of these introduced populations are still spreading, although it is not considered invasive anywhere. The population in Costa Rica was introduced by at least 1970 and was still in the process of expanding as of 2011. It is found on the eastern Caribbean coast, from as far south as Bribri near the Panamanian border, west to Siquirres, and north to Turrialba. It is known from a number of localities in Limon Province and one in Cartago Province. In southern Florida it has been documented west up to the Tampa Bay area and occurs on Key Biscayne, Dade County and in Miami. It was introduced sometime in the Urs. It was first reported on the island of Dominica in 2003, thought to have been introduced around 2000, or between 1997 and 2002. And as of 2007 has established itself throughout the environs of the main city of Roci. It is believed to have entered the island via imported goods, as its sites of original invasion are adjacent to a cargo airport and a seaport. As we transition to the next segment, let's unravel the mysteries surrounding Anolis cristatellus wylie and gain a fresh perspective. This subspecies is found on islands off the eastern coast of Puerto Rico, such as Culebra, Culebrita and Vicus, and also on the US and British Virgin Islands. It is widespread on the British Virgin Islands and present on all the major islands and most cays, including Andita, Beef Island, Foreign Jerusalem Island, Frenchman's Cay, Great Dog Island, Guana Island, Jost Van Dyke, Little Thatch, Necker Island, Norman Island, Peter Island, Prickly Pear Island, Tortola, Virgin Border and West Dog Island. In the U.S. Virgin Islands it occurs on Flanagan Island and Skipper Jacob Rock. This form is not spreading throughout the Caribbean like the other subspecies. One might question how such a lizard could be present on such a vast number of otherwise small and isolated islets. However, the modern distribution likely does not reflect an exceptional colonizing ability of this species to sally forth over marine distances, or that Arawak peoples somehow spread these creatures over the various cays. Instead, what is now a collection of islands was previously connected, only 8 to 10 millennia ago, in a much larger island stretching from Puerto Rico to Andita, and since the Eemian era remained such a large island throughout the last ice age. This is an example of vicariant distribution as opposed to overweighted dispersal. The modern distribution consists of relict populations reflecting the former geography. As we venture forward, let's examine habitat in detail and gain a deeper appreciation for its significance. This anole is found in almost all habitats throughout Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, from open fields to rainforest, except some of the high-altitude elfin forests in the mountainous regions of Puerto Rico. The species is found from sea level upwards, decreasing in abundance at higher elevations, with the animals having been found at maximum altitudes of 2,800 foot in the reservoir Forestal de Morico as of 1988, and later 980 meters in the Los Tres Picachos State Forest 2000. The introduced population in Costa Rica appears to prefer urban habitats, being mostly found on tree trunks or buildings in towns or cities, and rarely in rural areas or in forests, and population on Dominica appears to have similar preferences. In general, introduced populations appear to strongly prefer or be restricted to urban and other disturbed areas. Anoles of this species found in the urban habitats of the cities of Puerto Rico are found to have lost and reground their tails more often than those of the natural forests. This may be due to a higher density of urban predators such as house cats, or less places to escape predators, or might indicate urban predators are less accomplished at actually catching their prey. In some parks, such as Los Tres Picachos State Forest, it may be less common than species such as a caudal, a Evermini, a Gundlichi, and a Cristatellus. These lizards are ground trunk anoles, which is an anolis ecomorph, and means that they spend the majority of their time on the bottom 2 meters of tree trunks, but will go to the ground to forage and also to lay eggs. Our focus now turns to behavior, an important aspect of our discussion. It is oviparous egg-laying. The lizards shed their skin as they grow, and eat their old skins when they do so, perhaps to conserve the nutrients. Compared to some other species of anoles, this species is not so vocal, although it can make some chirping sounds. As a defense against predators, they can autotomize, break off their tails, and later grow a new replacement tail which gets longer each time they shed their skin. These new tails do not have the bony vertebrae of the original, and instead only have a rod of cartilage. This growth of cartilage does not have the ability to autotomize, so in order to do the same trick again, an individual lizard must lose more and more of its tail vertebrae. Because the reground tails of urban lizards contain on average a similar amount of vertebrae as those of the forests, this indicates that individual lizards lose their tail just as often in either habitat. When looking for a mate or defending its territory, the males of many anole species may display their dewlap and perform push-ups to establish dominance. Males of many species may aggressively defend territories when mating, but only rarely does this result in physical combat. Like many anole species, this lizard can change color from dark brown to tan. This is in response to emotions, rather than a method of camouflaging itself such as true chameleons. As we enter this new phase, let's analyze diet from different angles and evaluate its significance. In Puerto Rico, this species has been photographed trying to gobble up quite large prey such as the blind snake Typhlops hypermethys, as well as other anoles, such as a juvenile écrouge. In this section, we'll be shedding light on interactions with other species and its impact on our understanding of the subject. In some regions, such as El Yunque National Forest, a cristatellus occurs together with up to 7 other species of anole which are able to occur symmetrically with it because each species occupies a different ecological niche. In the Los Tres Picachos State Forest, it occurs together with a caudal, a Evermini, a Gundlichi, a Cruche, a Occultus, a Pulchellus, and a Cristatellus. Besides a Pulchellus, these other 7 anoles often occur together throughout Puerto Rico. It occurs together with a cookie in Gunica State Forest, although it competes ecologically with this rare species. Brace yourself for an in-depth analysis as we navigate through predators and its far-reaching implications. Henderson and Robert Powell 2009 record that this species may be eaten by another anole, a caudal, as well as the non-native mongoose, Herpestis javanicus, and the bird Margorops fuscatus, a thrasher. In a 2008 study of the reptilian components of the diets of Caribbean birds, Powell and Henderson record the birds of prey Buto jamacensis and Falcus barbarus feeding on this anole. Rios Lopez et al. Recorded in 2015 that the Puerto Rican endemic bird Todus mexicanus, a species of toady known locally as San Pedrito, eats this lizard. Now let's delve into the intricacies of parasites and explore its various aspects. as parasites. Goldberg et al. 1998 recorded the Digny flatworm Mesocolium monas and the tapeworm Eucharisticum macoi. These, and other later, researchers have also recorded the pinworm Paraphryngodon cubensis, which inhabits the large intestine. Henderson and Powell 2009 record the acanthocephalin worm of the Plagiahinchidae family, Luhia inscripta. These are all larger-sized generalist parasites which can infect numerous more or less related hosts. In its native Puerto Rico, individuals of this species may sometimes contract a type of anole malaria, Plasmodium azulophyllum, a unicellular eukaryotic parasite that infects both the white and red blood cells of its victims, and which is thought to be contracted from infected mosquitoes. The disease commonly afflicts another anole species which occurs in the same forests, a gundlichi, with usually around 30% of that species being infected as opposed to under 1% for a cristatellus. Let's now shift our focus to relationship to humans and explore the ways in which it shapes our perspective. They are sold globally in the pet trade. Let's zoom in on conservation and understand its implications. This is an extremely common species in Puerto Rico, and it is believed that it has likely become more common over the last few centuries as humans have converted much more of the island to the type of habitat that this species prefers. According to Malhotra et al. In 2007, its introduction to the island of Dominica threatens Anolis aculeatus, an anole endemic to the island, because within a few years of being introduced it had begun to supplant A. aculeatus in the dry and urban southwestern coastal area in the surrounds of the capital Roci. Within this area the Dominican anole had become absent or rare, but it was thought that a cristatellus might not spread into or become so dominant in the moist forests or mountainous areas in the rural areas elsewhere on the island. Elsewhere there is no recorded evidence of damaging effects on other Anolis species or native ecosystems. It has been recorded as present in the following protected areas of a natural Cage de Muertos, Ponce, Puerto Rico, United States of America. Gunica State Forest, Puerto Rico, United States of America. Los Tres Picachos State Forest, Puerto Rico, United States of America. Luquilla Experimental Forest within El Yunque National Forest, Puerto Rico, United States of America. Reserva Forestal de Morico, Puerto Rico, United States of America. Virgin Islands National Park, St. John, United States. Virgin Islands, USA. Your feedback helps me improve, so please take a moment to leave a comment or review.